Every August, Formula One hits the brakes and turns the lights off. For 2 solid weeks, the FIA enforces a mandatory summer shutdown. The factories lock their doors, the wind tunnels go quiet, the supercomputers go dark, and engineers are legally banned from even peeking at their work emails. Why? Because F1 knows the basics. You run a high-performance engine at maximum revs without letting it cool down, it won't just drop off a bit of pace. It will throw a rod through the engine cover and blow itself to pieces. Meanwhile, European football returns this week after a non-stop summer of international tournaments, individual off-season grinds, and grueling long-distance pre-season tours, expecting players to perform with next to zero mental reset. But whether you're an F1 driver putting 4Gs through Spa, a Premier League midfielder playing 60 matches or so a year, or an executive spinning plates through a high-pressure quarter, your central nervous system runs on the same wiring. Ignore the warning signs of chronic stress, burn the candle at both ends for too long, and your brain doesn't just get tired. It pulls the emergency brake and it blows the fuse. Today on Sport Rewired, we're breaking down burnout, what F1 drivers and elite footballers actually do behind the scenes to keep from hitting the wall, the science of physical collapse, why passive scrolling on your phone isn't real rest, and the practical hypnotherapy protocols you can use to reset your nervous system before your engine overheats. Hi, I'm Grant White, the hypnotherapist. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest elephant in the rooms in high performance, burnout. What it actually does to your body and your brain, how elite athletes manage close season recovery, and how to scientifically reset your nervous system when you're running on absolute fumes. Let's get straight into the wiring. Let's start by clearing up a massive myth that gets tossed around like confetti in both sport and business and, well, life in general. Most people use the word burnout as a casual way of saying they've had a tough week, maybe even a tough month. You hear someone maybe say on a Friday afternoon, "Oh, I'm completely burned out. I need a massive lie-in this weekend." But let's be honest, tiredness and burnout are 2 entirely different animals. In clinical psychology, cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, and psychoneuroimmunology, which is just a fancy term for how your brain, your nervous system, and your immune system talk to each other, the distinction between tiredness and burnout is night and day. Tiredness is normal physical depletion. You work hard, you empty the tank, you get some good shut-eye, your body repairs itself, and you wake up ready to go again. Burnout is a systematic functional breakdown. It's what happens when your stress response engine gets stuck in overdrive for months on end. You can sleep in 12 hours on a Saturday and you'll still wake up on the Sunday feeling like you're wading through wet concrete. To understand why burnout feels so physically crushing, let's look at what's happening within. When you operate under non-stop pressure with no recovery, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight system stays locked online. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, whether it's day or night. Normally, cortisol is quite normal. It spikes in the morning. You need that to get out of bed, and it drops off in the evening so your body can enter deep cellular repair. But under chronic stress, that natural curve flattens out. You end up feeling wired at night, and all you want to do is sleep, and you're maybe feeling completely dead on your feet in the morning when you need to perform. You're running on adrenaline, but the battery is completely flat. If you look at the landmark research done by Professor John Grisilier and his team at Imperial College London back in 1998 and 2001, they wanted to see what happens to human immune defenses during prolonged periods of high stress. They measured a key antibody called salivary immunoglobulin A, or SIG-A. Think of SIG-A as your body's frontline security guards, the bouncers in your throat and nose that stop viruses and infections from getting past the velvet rope. Grisilier proved that under sustained performance stress, SIG-A levels drop off a cliff, while cortisol secretion goes haywire. This is why athletes in the middle of a brutal fixture pileup or professionals grinding through an intense quarter suddenly get hit with recurring colds, stomach bugs, constant infections. It's not a coincidence. Their psychological stress has literally disarmed their physical immune system. They are wide open to the elements. Now, let's contrast that with the study by Risler Smith and colleagues in 1995. They took individuals under stress and split them into groups, testing self-hypnosis against basic relaxation. The results were nothing short of remarkable. The group practicing self-hypnosis showed a massive boost in key immune cells, specifically B cells, T cells, and helper cells, compared to those who were just sitting back trying to relax. Why? Active self-hypnosis deliberately dials down the fight or flight response, giving the body the biological signal it needs to exit the threat state and turn the immune shield back on. It gives the body out of its war mode and puts it back into peace mode, if you will. When you ignore those physical warning signs and try to just push through it, your brain eventually takes matters into its own hands. And as we've talked about on previous episodes, your brain has a protective safety switch in the insular cortex known as the central governor. When the central governor sees that your cortisol is chronically elevated and your immune markers are dropping, it knows you're running the engine into the red. To protect your heart and your organs from permanent damage, it forcefully pulls the plug. It floods your brain with what feels like brain fog. It wipes out your motivation. It makes simple tasks feel like moving mountains. Burnout is not a failure of your own willpower. It's your brain pulling the handbrake to try to save your life. But what keeps that fight or flight engine running in the first place? In rational emotive behavior therapy, otherwise known as REBT, you look at the rigid, perfectionist demands we place on ourselves. Something along the lines of, I must perform at 100% capacity in every single match or meeting, or I am a failure. If I take a break, everyone else will overtake me. I cannot show weakness or admit that I'm struggling. When you hold those rigid expectations, your brain treats downtime as a dangerous vulnerability. So even when you're sitting on the sofa trying to relax with your family, your internal threat engine is still revving at 10,000 RPM in the background. You're physically on the couch, but mentally you're still in the trenches. This brings us to a fascinating real-world question. How do elite sports teams or people actually structure downtime to stop their athletes from hitting this wall? If you look at Formula One versus elite European football, you see two completely different approaches to managing human stress. And there are massive lessons here for our own careers or even our own lives. In Formula One, Article 24 of the FIA sporting regulations, and let me tell you, it's a riveting read, it mandates a strict 14-day summer shutdown. During those 2 weeks, car development completely freezes. No wind tunnel testing. No simulations, no manufacturing new parts, no simulator runs, and no team meetings. Nothing going on at the factory whatsoever. Because this rule applies to every team on the grid equally, nobody can gain an advantage while others rest. It takes away the fear of falling behind. It levels the playing field for recovery. So what do the drivers do? What do team personnel actually do during those 2 weeks? Formula One drivers, guys like Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, they go completely off the grid. They get away from the racetracks. A lot of them tend to turn off their phones. They tend to step away from Formula One headlines, take their head out onto the water. They could go hiking. Some of them spend uninterrupted time with their family. They deliberately remove every single mental trigger that gets their racing brain firing. They pull that racing plug at the wall. Drivers, though, don't just sit completely motionless on a sunbed for 14 days because a sudden halt can cause the system to seize up. Instead, they shift to low-impact active recovery. A lot of them do light swimming, ocean paddling, gentle yoga, mobility work, maybe even cycling. This flushes out lactic acid, maintains joint range of motion, and keeps the engine ticking over without spiking heart rate or cortisol. They treat those 2 weeks as a non-negotiable mental reset so they can attack the second half of the season with sharp executive processing and lightning fast reaction times. Now, let's contrast that with modern professional football. The old days of players taking 6 weeks off in June to drink beer, eat wherever they want on a beach, they're long gone. Today, a player's close season is meticulously calculated, highly monitored. Immediately after the final match or international tournament, sports scientists of various football clubs mandate a brief 10 to 14-day period of total physical and mental disconnection for the players. The objective here isn't building fitness. It's letting the nervous system settle and letting the micro-trauma in muscle tissue heal. It's about putting the tools down. After that brief window, players transition into individual off-season training programs created by the fitness coaches at their own clubs. They use GPS smartwatches, heart rate monitors to log data sent directly to the club's medical staff. They do heavy, single-leg strength work like Bulgarian split squats and Nordic hamstring curls to fix structural muscle imbalances created during the season, alongside aerobic base running to keep their cardiovascular engines tuned. By the time the players walk back to the training ground in July, they step straight into double sessions, high-intensity box-to-box shuttle runs, bleep tests, you name it. Multi-game promotional tours across North America or Asia, which are now becoming much more commonplace in modern football, jumping straight through all of those time zones. Here is the psychological trap in modern football, actually. If an international tournament runs late into June, players often get their 14-day physical vacation cut short. They jump straight from international pressure into individual conditioning programs and then straight into preseason testing. They might arrive at a game one of the Premier League season in peak physical condition, but cognitively, emotionally, they're completely fried. Their physical engine is tuned, but the nervous system hasn't had that total F1 style disconnect. This is why you see so many world-class players suffer mid-season slumps, or even teams that have been previously successful in the previous season that have won F1 titles, won trophies, won Champions Leagues, tend to be hit by those slumps for almost what feels like the entire season. Their mental baseline was never properly restored. They ran out of mental fuel before their season ever really got going. This highlights the big mistake most of us make in our own lives. We confuse passive distraction with active cognitive rest. If you ask most professionals how they unwind after a stressful week, they'll tell you, I flock on the couch, I watch TV. Or maybe they could turn around to you and say, I scroll through social media on my phone for an hour. From a neuroscience perspective, scrolling on your phone or binging TV, it's fake rest. That may sound blunt, but it's a total optical illusion. When you scroll through a social feed, your brain, whether you realize it or not, is processing thousands of rapid visual images. It's making micro-judgments. It's reading headlines. It's firing off tiny hits of dopamine and stress. Your body might still be on the sofa, but your brain is working a double shift. You're giving your legs a rest, sure, but you're actively starving your brain of recovery. You're not recharging your battery. You're just running a different app that drains it. To understand true mental recovery, we have to look back to the father of modern hypnotherapy, a Scottish surgeon named James Braid in the 1840s. Braid actually realized the word hypnosis, which comes from the Greek word for sleep, was actually a complete misnomer. He suggested that it should really be called Monoideism. This simply means narrowing your mind's focus down to one single, absorbed, relaxing thought or sensory feeling, to the total exclusion of all other noise. That single focus concept is the absolute key to mental recovery. True mental rest happens when you give your brain a single anchor point, like the steady rhythm of your breath, a structured muscle relaxation scan, or a focused mental image. When you anchor your mind on one point, you turn off the brain's default mode network. That's the background chatter network that's responsible for your overthinking, worrying about tomorrow, replaying mistakes from yesterday, the rumination that goes on in your own mind. When you're scrolling on your phone, that chatter network, it stays wide awake. It's buzzing away in the background. But when you use self-hypnosis to focus a single anchor, you give your executive brain a complete break. You're allowing your body to shift instantly into deep physical repair. This is backed up by two brilliant psychological principles. A couple that we've actually mentioned before in previous podcasts. Irving Kersh's response expectancy theory. Kersh proved that what you explicitly expect to happen in your body directly triggers automatic physical responses. If you view rest as lazy, if you feel rest as something that makes you feel guilty just because you've taken a break, your body, it stays in that threat state. But when you reframe rest as a high-yielding performance strategy, expecting it to drop your heart rate, clear your head, boost your immune system, your nervous system responds to that expectation by speeding up physical recovery. Nicholas Spanos, he showed that hypnotic relaxation isn't a magical trance state that happens to just come along by luck. It's an active skill driven by clear strategies and focus. Recovery is something you can actively execute, not something you passively wait around to feel. This has been further supported by meta-analytic reviews from researchers like Adam Eason and Ben Paris, confirming that self-hypnosis is empirically backed standalone tool for stress reduction that far outperforms passive resting. The studies by Werner in 2013 showed that even using short audio-guided self-hypnosis significantly improves physical and mental coping under extreme pressure. Now, what if you're listening to this and realizing you've already gone past the point of prevention? What if your engine is already overheating? Your central governor has pulled the plug and you're feeling completely burned out right now. How do we systematically rebuild? The secrets of recovering from burnout lies in metacognition, or what we call stepping into the observing self. When you're stuck in deep burnout, you completely feel trapped inside the exhaustion. Every heavy limb, every wave of brain fog, every negative thought feels completely overwhelming. You feel like a victim of your own fatigue. In 2020, researchers Dinez, Palfi, and Lush published fascinating work on the brain's ability to deliberately alter how we physically experience fatigue, pain, and stress using targeted mental focus and suggestion. To make this work, you have to step into the observing self. In normal life, you're trapped in what's known as the first position. You are the fatigue. You might be thinking, I am completely exhausted. My brain is fried. I can't cope with this. You identify with the exhaustion. Stepping into the observing self is like moving out of the pitch and stepping up into the commentary box in your own head. You have that step back. You're looking at your physical state objectively, like a commentator analyzing a match from a distance. Instead of saying to yourself, I am burned out, the observing self says, I notice that my body is currently displaying heavy fatigue and tight shoulders. I'm observing these physical feelings objectively, without judging them or without any panic. That simple shift creates and gives you psychological space. It stops you from panicking about being tired, which cuts off the secondary surge of adrenaline that we mentioned earlier, that keeps your stress engine running hot. You stop fighting the tiredness, which instantly saves what's left of your energy. Basically, you stop throwing good money after bad. Well, this is just a peek into a small section of what would be done in a clinical therapy room. By stepping into the commentary box during self-hypnosis, you reclaim your internal locus of control. At least you start to do that. Research consistently shows that when you realize you are actively directing your focus, your self-efficacy skyrockets. You realize that while you can't magically erase 3 months of accumulated fatigue overnight, you can take control of your nervous system right now in this moment. Through simple self-hypnosis and deep diaphragmatic breathing, you intentionally flip your body switch from sympathetic fight or flight back into parasympathetic rest and digest. You drop your heart rate. You lower your blood pressure. Unclench your muscles and give your immune system the exact environment it needs to rebuild its frontline shield. You stop being the victim of burnout, and you become the active manager of your own recovery. You might be listening to this right now and thinking, Grant, this neuroscience is great, really interesting, but I don't have a mandatory 2-week Formula One factory shutdown written into my contract. How do I build this into a crazy 40, 50, 60-hour working week, spinning along my responsibilities as a mother, a father, whoever you are, wherever you may be? You build it by creating something I would call micro-shutdowns. Taking the exact same principles F1 teams use and scaling them into your own daily routine. This is not full-blown therapy. However, with practice, consistency, you can yield the results from this. Here is my simple 3-step burnout prevention and recovery protocol you can implement starting today. The first step is to set a non-negotiable end to your operational workday. Just as Formula One factories turn off their wind tunnels and lock their doors during the summer break, pick a time every evening. Make it your routine. Let's say, for example, it's 7 o'clock in the evening, where your work brain goes officially off-grid. Turn off the work notifications. Put your work laptop, especially if you work from home, out of sight in a drawer. Close it away behind a door. Use this simple physical transition, like changing out of your work clothes, taking a hot shower, taking a 10-minute walk, to signal to your brain that the operational threat period is closed. Work is done. Draw a line in the sand. The next step is to stop relying on social media or TV to recharge your brain. Once a day, preferably during your mid-afternoon slump or right after work, spend 10 minutes practicing active self-hypnosis. By this I mean, quite simply, sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Focus 100% of your attention on the single physical sensation of your breath, expanding your diaphragm. You can do this now. Just as a bit of practice, count your exhales with your eyes closed. And count backwards from 20 all the way down to 1. When intrusive thoughts about your inbox pop up, step into the commentary box that we previously discussed. Observe the thoughts without judgment. Gently slide your focus right back to your breath. You're giving your executive brain 10 minutes of pure neural recovery, lowering your cortisol and boosting your immune shield. The final thing I'd like you to do is to focus on expectancy. Get rid of the guilt around taking time off, around taking this time for yourself. Every time you step away from your desk, go for a walk, protect your weekend, tell yourself, this is active calibration. I am upgrading my focus. I'm boosting my immune system. I'm lowering my cortisol. I'm protecting my long-term output, my long-term health. By changing your expectation, you give your body permission to enter into deep physical repair. Rest is not the opposite of performance. It's the catalyst for it. You imagine your body the most valuable pieces of performance gear you will ever own. Running them continuously at maximum res with active structured recovery, it's not a badge of honor. It's just bad engineering. Whether you're driving a race car, managing a football team, running a business, learning to calibrate your nervous system and protect your baseline is the ultimate competitive advantage. If you notice that chronic stress, fatigue, or performance burnout is creating friction in your career, sport, leadership style, it's simply a signal to refine your mental strategy. To discuss building a custom state management or burnout recovery protocol tailored to your specific performance or professional goals, visit my website at www.grantingprogress.com or drop me an email via hello@grantingprogress.com. Thank you for tuning into episode 6 of Sport Rewired. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take some time right now to leave a review, hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Substack, or YouTube, wherever you may be listening. Share the word. Get more people listening. Bring them into the conversation. You're the best way to help this show reach new listeners, wherever you may be. Also, feel free to send me a note or leave a review letting me know what sort of sports event or psychological topic you want me to take a look at next week. I'm Grant Wyeth. This has been Sport Rewired. Focus on the process, manage your baseline, and I'll see you on the next one.